Earth had not always been silent. Once, it had been a crossroads of voices, signals that stretched across the stars, whispers of civilizations brushing against one another in the dark. But then, without warning, the noise stopped. The sky went quiet, and humanity never knew why. For generations, people assumed they were alone. Telescopes scanned endlessly, probes drifted through the void, and signals were broadcast into nothingness. There were no replies, only the cold echo of their own existence bouncing back. What humanity didn't know was that the silence wasn't natural, it had been enforced. Millennia ago, long before recorded history, Earth had been marked. Not conquered, not destroyed, simply isolated, encased within a boundary so vast and subtle that even the most advanced instruments could not detect it. A veil that severed the planet from the greater cosmos. Inside that veil, time flowed differently, not slower, not faster, but insulated. Civilizations beyond Earth rose and fell like sparks in a storm. Entire galactic empires burned bright and vanished while humanity struggled through its own fragile evolution. Stone tools, empires, machines, digital dreams, unaware that outside, eternity was moving on without them. The isolation had a purpose. Deep beneath the Earth's crust, buried in a chamber older than the continents themselves, lay something that did not belong to humanity. It was not a weapon, not a machine, and not alive. Yet it was all three at once. It pulsed with a rhythm. That did not match time. It was a key. The first humans had found it, though they hadn't understood it. Their fear had been immediate, instinctual. They had sealed it away, leaving behind warnings etched in symbols that would become myths, then legends, then forgotten stories. But the ones who placed the veil understood exactly what it was. They called it the timeless seed. It was said that, if awakened, it would not simply change a civilization, it would rewrite its place in existence itself. A species that unlocked it would no longer be bound by time, by causality, or even by the linear progression of reality. Such power could not be allowed to spread unchecked. So Earth was hidden, not destroyed, not erased, but quarantined. A sanctuary and a prison in one. The rest of the universe agreed. Better to let one world remain ignorant than risk the unraveling of everything. And so humanity lived on, unaware that they were the center of a decision made by beings far older and far more advanced than they could imagine. But isolation does not last forever. As humanity advanced, they began to notice anomalies, signals that flickered and vanished, patterns in cosmic radiation that didn't align with known physics, instruments that, for brief moments, registered something beyond the observable universe. At first, these were dismissed as errors. Then came the breakthrough. A young physicist, brilliant, obsessive, discovered a fluctuation in time itself. Not a distortion, not a dilation, but a seam. A boundary. Something that shouldn't exist. He didn't know it yet, but he had found the edge of the veil. Governments took notice. Quietly at first, then with urgency. Resources were redirected, research accelerated. The search for life beyond Earth had suddenly become something far more dangerous. Because now it wasn't about finding others. It was about understanding why they hadn't been found. As experiments intensified, the veil began to react. Subtle. At first, a delay in signals, unexplained interference. Then more aggressive, entire satellites going dark, data erased without a trace. Something was watching, or perhaps, something was maintaining the barrier. The physicist pushed forward anyway. He constructed a device capable of interacting with the seam, a way to knock on whatever lay beyond. It was risky, unprecedented, and entirely forbidden by those who had begun to suspect the truth. He activated it. For a single moment, the veil trembled, and beyond it, something answered. It wasn't a signal in any known form. It wasn't language. It was awareness. Vast, ancient, and unmistakably real. It pressed against the boundary, like a hand against glass. Humanity was not alone, and worse, they had never been meant to be found. The response triggered a cascade. The veil, stable for millennia, began to fracture. Tiny cracks at first, invisible to most, but growing. Through those cracks, the universe beyond became visible, not as stars, but as movement. Fleets, structures, entities that dwarfed comprehension. They had been waiting, not for conquest, for confirmation. Earth was still intact. The timeless seed was still dormant, and now it was in danger of awakening. Panic spread through the hidden watchers beyond the veil. For ages they had maintained the quarantine, ensuring Earth remained isolated, ensuring the seed remained untouched. But humanity had advanced faster than expected. Too fast. The decision was made. If the veil could not hold, then the alternative had to be considered. Erasure. Not out of cruelty but necessity. A world could be sacrificed. Reality itself could not. Back on Earth, the physicist realized what he had done. The presence beyond the veil wasn't welcoming. It wasn't curious. It was calculating. He wasn't reaching out. He had triggered a failsafe. In the depths of the planet, the timeless seed stirred. For the first time in millennia, its pulse changed. It was waking up, and with it came a realization that struck like a thunderclap across human understanding. The isolation had never been about protecting the universe from Earth. It had been about protecting Earth from what the universe would do if the secret was ever revealed. The first signs of awakening were subtle, too subtle for most to notice. Atomic clocks began to drift out of sync, not by seconds but by impossibilities. Moments repeated. Shadows moved before their sources. Entire conversations were remembered before they happened. The physicist watched in horror as reality itself started to bend around the phenomenon he had uncovered. Equations no longer held steady. Constants, once believed to be unchanging, flickered like unstable code. It was as if the universe was trying to correct something, or prepare for it. Deep beneath the Earth, the chamber housing the timeless, seed cracked open for the first time since it had been sealed. Not violently, but with a quiet inevitability. The air around it distorted, light curving inward as though drawn to a center that did not exist. And then, it pulsed. Not in time, not in sequence. The pulse echoed across past, present, and future simultaneously. People across the world felt it, some as déjà vu, others as a sharp, inexplicable fear. A few understood it. Those few began to change. They saw fragments of events before they unfolded. They reacted to dangers that had not yet appeared. Their minds stretched across moments, grasping threads of causality that others couldn't perceive. Humanity was beginning to touch something it was never meant to. Beyond the fracturing veil, the watchers observed with growing urgency. The fractures were spreading faster than predicted. Containment protocols that had held for millennia were failing under the pressure of something they could not directly interfere with, the seed itself. Intervention fleets moved closer, not to invade, but to prepare for the final option. Vast constructs aligned at the edge of the barrier, their purpose singular and absolute. If the awakening reached critical mass, they would act without hesitation. Back on Earth, the physicist made a desperate choice. If the seed had awakened because of the breach, then perhaps the breach could still be sealed. He returned to the device, the one that had touched the seam, and began rewriting its parameters, trying to reverse what he had started. But the device no longer obeyed him. Its readings displayed impossible data, events that had not yet occurred, outcomes that contradicted one another, timelines overlapping in chaotic patterns. The machine was no longer measuring reality. It was entangled with it. And then something spoke. Not through sound, not through signal, but directly into his awareness. It was vast, incomprehensible, yet precise in its intent. It was not one of the watchers beyond the veil. It was the seed. It did not threaten, it did not demand, it simply revealed. Time, as humanity understood it, was a limitation. an illusion imposed to keep existence stable. The seed was not a weapon nor a tool, but a gateway to a state beyond that limitation, a state where cause and effect no longer chained reality together. Humanity had not been chosen to guard it. Humanity had been chosen to inherit it. The isolation, the veil, the watchers, it had all been a test, not of strength or intelligence, but of restraint, of whether a species could reach the edge of ultimate power and still choose not to use it. The physicist understood the final truth too late. By seeking answers, by breaking the silence, humanity had already made its choice. Above the planet, the veil shattered completely. The universe flooded in, and the Watchers, bound by their ancient directive, began the countdown to erase a world that had just learned how to defy time itself.